Good evening, tasters. This is the final chapter of my top 12 whiskies of my collection. Remembering most of these are under $100, but a couple of the ones I'm going to mention now will challenge that. So my number 3 whisky is from Highland Park, Orkney Islands. This is the Highland Park 18-year-old. Now, I did do a review recently of the Highland Park 10-year-old. That was Niveler's Nightcap Note number 58. But this is a special whisky. Sadly, this is nearly finished. I've had this bottle for approaching 10 years or so, and I treat myself very carefully, very rarely. I purchased this bottle for $135. To replace it now is $250, and which is now outside my price range. Hence, I hang on to this, and when I do sample it, I just have a little smidge. I could sit here for some time nosing that, and you would get very bored, and I wouldn't. So I'll move on. Oh, that's just a great nose. Even a hint of bacon in there. I find that very hard to understand, but it's just great. Well, sometimes I wonder if things could get better. But indeed they do, with number 2 and number 1. But this is gentle peat, soft toffee, it's superbly balanced, has a really velvety palate, lots of fruit and honey, a long, elegant finish. One of my mantras, as most of you will have worked out by now, is leave things in barrel. Well, this has had 18 years in barrel, and this is a damn fine whisky that's had that time and has worked wonders. If you have the expense account to be able to afford a Highland Park 18, I recommend you do so. This is just great stuff. Number 2 on my list is Laphroaig. Laphroaig 10-year-old. And if you want to hear more about my story and my love affair with Laphroaig 10-year-old, please have a look at my Nightcap Note number 50, in which I raise my bat. Being a cricket follower here in Australia, once you make 50 runs, you raise your bat. Well, I did that in my 50th review. This, for me, is was a life-changing whisky. If you listen to the review and read and listen to my story about it, you'll understand why. This is a great, complex whisky with lashings of peat, medicinal characters, salt spray, tar, spice, pepper, and it's all in balance. An unmistakable whisky. I didn't I didn't understand that whiskey could have such power and flavour and yet not burn. This was the first single malt I bought, and I have never regretted it. It's changed my life and my bank balance. Look at around me here. All of these whiskies started by this. This is an unmistakable, marvellous drop. Now, before I go on to number one, which most of you who have seen my reviews would know what it is, there are some honourable mentions that I just couldn't squeeze into the top 12. For example, Ardbeg 10. I just couldn't get that third member of the Holy Trinity into my list. The Holy Trinity there on the bottom of Islay, about a kilometre apart. There's Laphroaig, Lagavulin, Ardbeg. Couldn't squeeze it in. And then Kailila, 18-year-old. Well, you can't fit everything into the top dozen. Kailila, 18-year-old, that's pretty special. Springbank, 10-year-old. Beautiful Campbelltown malt. Johnny Walker, Black Label. 12-year-old blended whiskey that's the best value for money whiskey going round. And the Tamdew 12-year-old. Beautiful sherry. Honourable mentions, couldn't squeeze them in. And so we finally arrive at my number one whiskey. It is Lagavulin 16-year-old. This is a fabulously complex whiskey. And it's always been a great memory of mine that I actually visited the Lagavulin distillery and tasted some of their whiskies. This has spent 16 years in barrel. It says here on the label, takes out the fire but leaves in the warmth. And that's exactly what it's like. My mantra, as I've often said, is put things and leave them in barrel. This has had 16 years old. I've tasted the Lagavulin 8-year-old, and it's a shocking thing. This is sublime. So everything's in balance. The nose is in balance. I just love it. There's smoke and peat in abundance, but as I say, it's in glorious balance. It's powerful and warming, as it says. It's taken out the heat and left in the warmth. If you've ever drunk Lapsang Souchong tea, it has that slight hint of tar. It's rich and thick, long and balanced finished. For quite some time, I could buy it on special here in Australia under $100. Unfortunately, those days are gone. Currently, this is retailing for around about $130 Australian. But it is worth every drop. So that's my top dozen at the moment. Tomorrow, I might come in here and review them quite differently. And that's the great fun of research. I hope your research is as enjoyable as mine. Lagavulin 16-year-old, number one of my collection. Great stuff. Thank you for listening.